The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Max Radio. We're on through till 1 o'clock today. Open line, text 166 177, WhatsApp 166 177 with 07624 in front. Email studio at maxradio.com. Call 66 13 68. I don't know if you've been following what's been happening in Keys this morning. We'll bring you up to date with that later on. In the meantime, the former Health Minister, Laurie Hooper, says he's getting back into the swing of things. There were 3 questions aimed at former ministerial colleagues seeking answers from the Council of Ministers regarding the health service and intends to challenge the Public Services Commission over the failure to publish annual reports, a legal obligation that hasn't been met. So there we are. And Mr. Cannon committed to intense discussions between the DHSC and Manxcare to straighten and strengthen governance and realign the mandate before the next budget, basically. There seems to be some sort of confusion, shall we say, as to who said what and to whom and what it should be doing. Anyway, the floor's yours. We're open line through till 1 today. Elizabeth's with us, first of all. Hello, Elizabeth.
Oh, good afternoon, Andy. I'm ringing in because there seems to be little response to the Post Office's idea that the 300 pensioners who still collect their pension are in the future, next year, having to go to the bank. I am elderly. I'm perfectly healthy, except that I could get into Ramsey to the bank, but the fact of the matter is I'm partially sighted. So to sign a cheque is very, very difficult. And there are other people who have carers, they haven't any family, and they are not going to give their details to a carer to go to the bank to collect money for them, are they?
Who have you taken this up with, Elizabeth? Have you spoken to anybody?
No, I haven't, because it only came on recently and I've been away. But I was quite surprised to hear it, and especially as the Post Office has had a profit of $2 million this year.
So you reckon 300 pensioners currently collect in cash?
Exactly.
Okay. What would you like to happen, Elizabeth?
Well, I would like that to continue. Not only that, but it brings in money to the local business where you collect your pension.
Okay. So, okay, let me see. I don't want to be personal, but how many years have you been collecting this in cash?
56 years.
Right. So, well, let's face it then. You're into the swing of things at the moment.
Definitely.
Well, they're obviously trying to get rid of cash. They're obviously trying to drive people towards bank accounts and what have you.
Exactly. That's exactly what they're trying to do.
Okay, so your feeling is for anybody who wants to collect in cash, they should collect in cash, and the rest can obviously, if they want banks, they can use banks.
Exactly that. It's a personal choice, isn't it, depending on your situation.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll put the question, Elizabeth, and I appreciate your call. Thanks for calling today.
Not at all. You're welcome.
Good to hear from you. 12:10 on Manx Radio, and David's with us now. Hi, David.
Hi, Danny. I just want to give you an update on... Do you remember some weeks ago I mentioned a person that fell off the rails and has no fixed abode and is actually now homeless?
Yes, I do, yeah.
He was actually transferred a couple of weeks ago from Nobles to Ramsey, and I went to see him last week on Wednesday, and I met with a social worker, a doctor, and some nurses there, and I was quite astounded when politicians are saying you can ring a number and somebody can be taken care of or looked after or not drop out of the system. Can I tell you, I met him again. I picked him up, said, right, we'll take you to where you used to live or near about there. And he said he was going to pick his car, and I can confirm today, or even at the weekend there, he's sleeping in a car. Now, this is not good for his health. He's 63, I think, 62 or 63. Can you imagine it's getting colder at night? And I met him when I came out of football on Saturday. This is the gospel truth. When I came out of the stadium, when we tidied up, we'd swept up and stuff like that, went to the car park, and I said, hey, what are you doing here? And he said to me, David, I have to park somewhere, and this is the most appalling bit, is where there's a toilet. I can maybe get hot water and get drinking water, from these fountains and stuff like that.
And this is in 2024?
2024. And I was just ashamed when I said to them too, this is gospel, I can tell you, because I was there in front of John as well, when one of the people said to him, well, if you don't go, we're going to charge you £360 a day. That's the policy from care at the hospitals. And I asked them for a copy of it, still haven't got it, and here we are now on Tuesday. I rang a number, and I'm not going to mention his name, but I'll mention his first name, Martin, and the number is 686-207. I'm still waiting for a call where a person becomes homeless, and for his own safety and safety is, where does he go? This little conference that happened last Wednesday, I was appalled where they said to a person, he's got $3,000. I don't mind you telling that. I'm sure he wouldn't mind himself. He was told by one of the social workers, spend all your money, and when you've spent all your money, we can help you.
So effectively he has to be penniless before he's declared homeless.
Well, I don't think so, to tell you the truth. I think that you're still entitled to hold something in the bank.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But as far as they're concerned, he has to be penniless. He has to have spent all his money before they'll take a look at him.
Yeah, and what do you do if you're sleeping in a car? You've got to travel around. You've got to charge the battery up. I was worried about him on Monday morning when I tried to ring him. His phone was dead all day. And he said to me, when I seen him again, I said to him, what happened? He said, the battery went flat. But you do panic, don't you? I know the guy. I've known him for 50 years. And one of the things was really annoying too, and maybe, Andy, you could take it up sometime, is he was told by the social worker, you have to get down to Markwell House and you have to do it before 1 o'clock because it shuts after 1 o'clock every day. So when you ring these numbers up at the weekend and stuff like that, asking for help, what do we do?
Well, you mentioned this particular gentleman. You mentioned, in passing, the word sanity, and obviously that's too strong a word. But the fact is, this will affect his state of mind. I mean, sleeping we're quite mild at the moment. It's 13 odd degrees in the middle of the night. It's quite mild, but it still gets nippy, and it's going to get colder as we go further through. So the fact that this gentleman has, as you say, fallen through the system, has some means, but obviously his life isn't where it should be, and the fact is it's a measure of our society that we should look after people.
Yeah. Now, John's aware I'm telling this story. He's happy with that. The other thing it looked about the other day was, remember the guy that went to prison because he was offered a tent to sleep in? He didn't have homeless... I wrote in his form, which I put into the commissions there, no fixed abode. I just wonder, like the guy that eventually will come out of prison, where's he going to go? So we've got two individuals, haven't we, at the moment? There's one in prison. And he did say to me at the end of the day, I'd be better off in prison. I'm fed, I'm looked after, I'll get all my medical treatment done, and I'll enjoy life a little bit more.
Yeah, but the thing is, no, that's not what it's about, though, is it, David?
No, it's not. It's about the government here, and some of these politicians are listening to them just a few minutes ago on the other station there. Instead of throwing gigantic stones into the pond and having to go at ex-people who are not doing anything in government, but just causing trouble.
Okay,
well, Andy,
wish John all the very best, and I do hope things improve in the future. Thanks, David.
I'll give you an update. Bye.
About 16 minutes past 12. Call 66 13 68 and text and email and WhatsApp. I attended one of the Manx Utilities events. Some opponents refused to come inside, and when I walked out after listening to the arguments, I was stopped and asked what I thought. When I told the group I'd changed my mind, they abruptly said they didn't want to hear or see a different view and that I'd been fed propaganda. Now, the people in the Moulton Hall, this is Castletown, answered all my questions honestly, and while I didn't like every single answer, I've now gone full circle. I am in favour of the scheme. A week on from the vote of no confidence, I remain more convinced than ever it was simply a move by those backbenchers who contribute very little or nothing, says 623. I really think that the likes of Tim Glover and Joni Farragher would have stepped down from departments. But for the change, which means, of course, they wouldn't lose any of their salary. It's easy to say it's a matter of principle when you have nothing to lose, says 623. Yeah, well said. We need to draw our pension in cash, especially if you live in a small village and you're not able to get to Ramsey. And to the MHK who said it's a benefit, it's not what we've worked for all our life. It's what we've worked for all our life. It's our pension. Thank you, says 585. And a message in that just says... The lady seems to be under the impression that the post office pays her pension. It doesn't. The post office has no say in how her pension is paid. But obviously, if it's not going to be paid in cash, then and that lady doesn't want it paid through a bank account, obviously the post office is the intermediary. Take your point. Mr. Hooper is challenging issues which he surely should have dealt with via Comin, but instead he's messed about with the Bishop's vote, and I think it's opportunist electioneering. Doesn't cover up what I think, says G on 313, is a lack of capability. I missed yesterday's programme, says Francesca Frankie. However, I'd take it with the Education Minister's U-turn on league tables, and their refusal to have them means that she's avoiding embarrassment. Because Francis thinks that standards in primary education are poor. Well, if you've got any kind of evidence for that, I mean, that's an opinion. And why is the department refusing to reveal the outcome of the report on schools? It's like they're marking their own homework. Time to bring in Ofsted from the UK and make unannounced visit like bank inspectors. Except really, we'd know if Ofsted were coming, wouldn't we? Because it's like the TV licence man. Everybody knows where they are. And a message that just says you can make appointments at Markwell House for the afternoon. You have to walk in the mornings, but you can make an appointment for the afternoon. There are homeless people on the Isle of Man, and they are constrained by law, rule and regulation. I'm sure there's a Vagrancy Act in place that forces homeless people to go underground, out of sight, out of mind. So it's about time it was recognised that there is hardly any provision, says 475, hardly any provision for homeless people on the Isle of Man, and we are literally sweeping the problem under the carpet. And if we sweep it under the carpet, nothing will be resolved. It would be interesting to know, there was a figure, wasn't there, after COVID as to how many people were effectively homeless. There are the sofa surfers, obviously. We don't really have people sleeping in the streets anymore or on park benches, but there's a lot of sofa surfing going on. You heard that Laurie Hooper was seeking answers from the Council of Ministers about Health Service, and he intends to challenge the Public Services Commission over its failure to publish annual reports. So is Laurie Hooper, remember it's not that long ago, Laurie Hooper was resigning So how is he finding the backbenchers?
So I've already tabled a slew of written questions to start building up an information base. I've got a few motions tabled now for the next couple of sittings. I think I've missed the November deadline, so in December, Tim, you'll start seeing stuff. There's already a few things on the register of business.
One of your questions is effectively attempting to extract information from the Council of Ministers. You're asking what reductions in health service provision have been outlined to the Council but are not supported by Manx Care. You already know the answer to that, don't you?
Yes, and it's quite helpful. The Council Ministers have today announced that they no longer support those changes as well. So it feels like we're moving ahead on that. The real underlying question, though, is, well, what are they proposing to do instead? Because it's very clear that Manx Care aren't going to be able to hold to the inadequate budgets that have been provided to them without having an impact on frontline services. So it'll be really interesting to see what the Council of Ministers' plan is now that they have gone out and rejected those cuts, quite rightly so, in my view.
Laurie Hooper. Any thoughts? Then text, email, call, WhatsApp. The Chief Minister has committed to intense discussions between DHSC and Manx Care to strengthen governance and realign the mandate for the next election. COMEN has directed that it will not fully endorse some of the cost-saving proposals brought forward by Manx Care and DHSC. The proposals were put forward to address the currently forecast overspend over and above the savings already communicated, including temporarily closing a number of frontline provisions, including ward closures within Nobles and Meds. Well, this is what the Chief Minister had to say.
They were raised to the Council of Ministers because they were in serious conflict with the mandate that Manx Care had been given, and of course they carried with it both significant impacts on patients, which is first and foremost our priority, and obviously significant potential knock-on impacts into the political arena as well.
Manx Care has already told us and been very open that cutting patient-facing services is a last resort. It says it's already chopped 195 other areas before it touched frontline services. So how are you expecting it to reduce its overspends, and when it says it's already done all it can behind the scenes?
I think what you just referred to is a cost improvement programme. There has been a significant cost improvement programme undertaken. But look, Kristen, I've got to go back to the starting position for us all in terms of what was allocated in the budget this year, the tax increase that went alongside that, the additional £43 million that was allocated in the budget, and the mandate that was delivered by the Health Minister at the time that said that Manx Care could deliver their services within the budget. And that was clearly stated on the mandate. It was certainly the position we were all expecting. And then to find literally 2 to 3 months later that that's not the position, that Manx Care were forecasting an overspend of something like 16 to 18 million pounds. A, was a shock, and secondly, was just not an acceptable position if we are to retain the integrity of our financial reserves.
Well, we'll see what happens. There was the Chief Minister, Alfred Cannon, MHK. It's 24 minutes past 12. Have you checked your router yet? If you've got a Draytek, D-R-A-Y-T-E-K, a Draytek router, about 440 have been identified as having critical issues on the Isle of Man. The Cybersecurity Centre for the island says critical issues have been identified in Draytek routers, allowing attackers to easily hack in, potentially compromising vital infrastructure, business and personal data. Now, this is serious. If you have a Draytek router, the small device that acts as a bridge to allow your systems connect to the internet via telephone or fibre, if you're using a Draytek router, you're being urged to take immediate action to address vulnerabilities by checking for updates and ensuring router firmware is up to date, following the manufacturer's instructions to apply any security patches, regularly checking for updates from the CSC, that's the Cybersecurity Centre, and Draytek, or speaking to your IT provider about patches and updates. Now, devices which haven't been updated can act as gateways for attackers, enabling them to see and modify all traffic passing through the router. So this is serious. It means that they can access sensitive information such as your login details, financial data, or personal correspondence. everything, basically. Now, residents and organisations are encouraged to report any cyber concerns to the Cybersecurity Centre's online portal, or for more information, you can call 685557. That's 685557. The important word is Draytek, Draytek. If you have a Draytek router, if you haven't yet dealt with that, then you must do as soon as possible. Robert's with us now. Hello, Robert.
Hi, Andy. You're getting all technical. Are you okay?
Yeah, what's on your mind, Robert?
I was just thinking about the electric railway going up to Ramsey. It doesn't seem to be happening during winters from now on. Is that correct?
Well, they've certainly cut back, and obviously there's all sorts of rumours in the future as to what's going to happen.
Well, it takes 3.5 hours to walk from Douglas to Ramsey. So, I was just wondering what the deal is.
Well, you could use a bus.
Could do, yeah, I suppose. But then you have to pay for it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, so, we'll say, I don't know what's the timetable like at this time of the year for the railway.
It'd be nice if they put a few ones on during Christmas just to let things go,
Oh, that'd be lovely, wouldn't it? Okay. All right, Robert, thanks for that.
All right, no worries, bye.
We need more security at the ports. It's a good thing, says Kevin, for those who are identified as being criminal, but in order to protect the Manx community and Manx workers, we also need a stricter work permit policy in place. Do you remember they slackened off on the work permit because there's a shortage of hospitality workers in particular, but I don't know. This is Kevin following up from the Chief Constable who was on last week talking about basically strengthening the borders. He didn't mince his words, did he, the Chief Constable? He said he was concerned about the borders. Concerned. And with the current crackdown on organised crime on the Isle of Man and the hefty censors that are being handed out, I just wonder what your thoughts are. Do you remember he specified two things: facial recognition and ANPR, automatic number plate recognition, whereby if they had facial recognition at either in the sea terminal or presumably they'd have it in Heysham terminal as well, or perhaps in Liverpool terminal. So the police could be tipped off because obviously if the computer systems recognise, let's say, UK cars with ANPR, they could tip the police off to the fact that maybe two particular cars were coming over every couple of weeks. Now, if there's nothing in it, there's nothing in it. But obviously, forewarned is forearmed. Now, Kevin thinks it's a good idea that we need more security at the port. Some people thought it was a bit of Big Brother having facial recognition. Now, I don't know how much facial recognition there is in Strand Street in Douglas, but I mean, you can walk from one end of Strand Street to Castle Street and you'll be on 30 or 40 CCTV cameras, whether they're council cameras or whether they're in commercial premises. So they are about. And whether or not that will, they can be used is another matter. But I mean, it's a fact of life now that we're all on CCTV whenever we walk in commercial premises. Have you got any thoughts on this? Mopeds owners paid road tax. Are electric cycles subject to road tax? Because both have engines. A moped has an engine, but an electric cycle has an engine. Of course it does. In my opinion, all users of vehicles, regardless of type, should pay tax and should have insurance to cover the exception. No difference between a moped and one of these electric bicycles. Okay? There's also the issue of children under the age of 16. It wouldn't put a lot in the coffers, but small drops make oceans. Soul Man, that is. So do you think electric cycles should pay road tax? Don't bring that up to the Treasury Minister.
I find it hard to get a doctor's blood test appointment to fit around work.
With my mobility issues, it's difficult to get to a hospital for a blood test.
If you find it inconvenient to go for a blood test, or you need one fast, then contact Top Care Nursing, where a nurse will do your blood test at home or in your workplace. Proud to be an Isle of Man Award for Excellence winner. Just call 628 919 for a free consultation or book online at topcarenursing.im.
We're cooking with sunshine, cholera. We're washing with sunshine, cholera. We're heating with sunshine, cholera. The future looks good. Call 676-544. Call 676-544. Call 676-544. Future looks good. 676-544.
Mrs. White is the only admitted killer. It was her with the rope.
I admit nothing. It was Miss Peacock in the kitchen with a dagger.
The Service Players present the hilarious comedy whodunit Clue at the Gaiety Theatre on the 14th to the 16th of November.
How dare you? It was Miss Scarlet with a candlestick. No, it was Professor Plum with the revolver in the study.
It was Colonel Mustard in the lounge with the wrench.
Clue, based on the devilishly enjoyable Cluedo board game.
Buy your tickets from villagaiety.com or the box office.
Wouldn't want you missing out on the fun now, would we?
Tonight here on Manx Radio at 5:30, join Kiri Kermode and myself, Simon Clark, for the new series of Countryside.
We hear from Krish from the MSPCA on how to prepare your animals for bonfire night.
And I look back at a very successful Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group Awards night and the presentation of the Bronze Chuff.
That's all in Countryside tonight here on Manx Radio at 5:30. And don't forget you can download and subscribe to the podcast for free at manxradio.com.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
It's 28 minutes now before 1, and a message in from Big John in Ramsey. We're a prosperous island, yet we have a lot of homeless people. The government can help. The government helped by taking away public benches so you can't sleep on them in town, like Ted did. So I'm disgusted by this, says Big John. And Daphne said, does anybody know what happened to Ted in Douglas? He used to live in the stairwell of Chester Street car park, sometimes sleeping in my garden in Mona Terrace some years ago. Thank you for that, Daphne. There is an issue with homelessness, although technically it's not like you see kind of the scenes in big cities around the world of people sleeping in tents and sleeping bags in doorways. Because most people either can find a place, but it will end up being somebody else's sofa or somebody else's floor somewhere. So technically homeless, but of course in reality they are sleeping somewhere. But that's highlighted with David's tale earlier on Manx Radio. We keep on mentioning that Manx Radio is 60 years old. And it's quite rare. In fact, Manx Radio, I think, is the oldest radio station in the British Isles. I think perhaps maybe the BBC World Service might have been going longer, but Manx Radio started in 1964. And there aren't many radio stations with the same name that are still around. And we're trying to track lots of people who've worked at Manx Radio over the years. Some are still with us, and some, sadly, aren't. There was a guy called James Drake who used to present on Manx Radio years and years ago. Sadly, James is no longer with us, but we're just trying to check if anybody knew James or was familiar with James or related to James, just to see whether there are any memories anywhere in his estate about Manx Radio. So if you knew of or knew James Drake, one-time presenter on Manx Radio, then do get in touch. It would be nice to honour his memory in our 60th anniversary year. Hi to Nicholas, who just said, has anybody noticed the wind hasn't been blowing for the past few days? So what would have happened if we'd had the array of onshore wind turbines or offshore wind turbines with no wind blowing over the past few days and not much to come in the days to come? So it will be nice if the government, or whether it's Manx Utilities or the Danish company Ørsted, could just furnish the public with an equation, the formula, says Nicholas, as to what will keep us to or below 29p per kilowatt hour. 29p per kilowatt hour. Because if what happens in the future, says Nicholas, that we go above 29p, and I think we will, says Nicholas, then surely they're trying to make us feel better by being green. But really, is this going to happen? Thank you, Nicholas. Well, it is true the wind has been fairly still over the past few days, so there wouldn't have been much generated, although it would be nice to know from Ørsted or Max Utilities at what point the wind turbines become active. At what point they start to generate. Do they generate the moment they start going round, or does it need a certain speed, a certain velocity? What is it? And what is the formula? What's the equation for how the electricity is generated, and at what point the money starts flowing, whether it's one way in sales or the other way in subventions or in subsidy? Any thoughts on this? Text, email, call and WhatsApp, and lots of messages coming in today, which I'll get to them. A moped is powered by an engine and subject to tax. An electric push bike is powered by a small EV motor as well as your legs. Therefore, it's not currently subject to tax, says Mark. That's the law at the moment, isn't it? It's just that the gentleman who messaged in earlier just said it does have a motor, so why shouldn't it be subject to tax? And why shouldn't it be insured? Because if you're driving something, if you're riding something that has got power other than your legs, then surely that's a powered vehicle, a powered bicycle. An electric push bike has a motor, not an engine. By definition, an engine is internal combustion provided by fuel, i.e. petrol and diesel or gas. An electric bike is limited to 15 miles per hour. A fuel-driven moped to 30 miles per hour. I'll just go back to the guy's point earlier on. Fair's fair. It's got a motor, or it's got an engine, whichever way you want. So what's the difference? And bearing in mind, we're all going to be driven towards motors, electric motors in the future, and they're going to have road fund license or road tax. So why not electric bicycles? Regarding protecting our borders from the baddies, I've mentioned it several times. Why are you still able to get on the boat without showing any ID? And by the way, says 500, baddies don't always use cars. Hence the Chief Constable's view about facial recognition. I mean, it does sound like Big Brother. We know all about this, and lots of people have facial recognition on their mobile phones and smart devices to access certain services, and the banks have it for accessing parts of your bank account. Is that a step too far for the Isle of Man, facial recognition? Sue Richardson was your best presenter. Not many people argue with that, 376. Sue was fantastic, wasn't she? Could you add a polite request that people don't set off fireworks after tonight? Please consider our pets. This terrifies pets, plus also the farm animals and wildlife. I, for one, think the sale should be banned and fireworks only used at arranged or advertised nights by professionals, says Stephanie. So think of the pets. Also, practically no sunshine for solar, says 695. Strictly, you don't need sunshine, but we take the point. You do need light. The EVs do set off at a certain level. But I just wonder how much we would have been in hock then over the past few days. No wind to speak of, so nothing would have been. And remember, if we don't have the Pulrose Power Station or Peel Power Station or anything like that, we'll be importing everything. We'll be over a barrel, because unless we've got forward contracts for electricity, we'll be buying retail, not wholesale. It would be nice if somebody told us what the situation was, rather than holding hands and jumping into a green future in hope rather than expectation. Here's Jill now. Hello, Jill.
Oh, hi. I'm just ringing about the homeless situation.
Yeah.
There was a charity drive which was running for years and years on the island for the homeless, which closed probably in about 2022, and then the church next door has taken it on as Grime Ministries. So there is a drop-in for the homeless on Monday to Friday from 10 till 2 for a hot meal.
And whereabouts is this? It's on
Broadway in Douglas.
Oh, right, I got you. Right, I know the place, yeah. So there is a drop-in place there.
There is, yeah. The evening drop-in where they could sleep overnight closed, but there is still a drop-in for food every day, apart from a Saturday, I think, from 10 till 2.
Were you anything to do with it, Jill?
My son kind of headed up Gry charity when it was running, yeah. So we've had homeless people like living with us and that kind of thing. So I would really advise people to go there if they're looking for help, and also they'll point you in the direction of maybe housing and that kind of thing, but also help with drug and alcohol abuse.
So it's Monday to Friday, from when to when?
From 10 till 2, and on Sunday from 12:30 till 2.
Okay, Jill, I mean, often you hear people saying that there isn't any homelessness on the Isle of Man. What would you say to them?
Oh, there definitely is. There's a lot of hidden homeless there. I remember my son once saying that because he made a note of the numbers coming through the doors, and I think one year was over 300. So there's people up on Marine, Drive and all over, and also they get really a bad deal from some landlords. But there's somebody there to help, is what I'm really trying to say, and it isn't that there's no homeless. It's just that it's hidden.
Yeah, I mean, what we need to do is offer a way out of homelessness for people. We obviously we don't want to make them completely dependent, but most people, if they fall off the rails, can get their act together with a bit of help, can't they, Jill?
Yes, they can. I mean, people are very close. People can just literally have an accident in a car, stop paying their mortgage, maybe somebody dies in their family, and then you're 3 steps away from being homeless almost. So yeah, but there's definite help and positive help if you go to Gry.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Jill.
Okay.
Good to hear from you. 17 minutes before 1. Your call to Robert regarding the MEA to Ramsey. A journalist visiting the Isle of Man, says 557, said it was one of the most picturesque journeys in Great Britain, and the staff and the drivers were excellent, says John. It's gorgeous, isn't it, that drive? And I love that Ramsey to Laxey journey, especially as you're coming through Lonnon when it's dusk. It's absolutely fantastic. It really is unbeatable, and there aren't many places in the world where you have a journey like that. In response to Nicholas, net zero is the money we'll have left in our pockets after the government green spending, says G. Well, it's a government policy. Thank you, G. It is a government policy that we are heading towards net zero. And the people who are putting this to us, the people who are framing it so that it will be our lives, obviously want to take us with them. It would just be nice if there was more information and perhaps a little less hope or trust demanded. It will be nice to know, and again, I'll probably come back to this and you'll get sick and tired of me saying 29p. 29p per kilowatt hour. What are we going to end up paying in the future? If it's above 29p, questions will need to be answered. If it's below, fine, but just let us know as soon as possible. In fact, I would recommend you write 29p in bold capitals on the whiteboard in your kitchen. Spray paint on the side of your shed so that you remember in the future. We pay 29p per kilowatt hour. What will we be paying in the future? What is the police customs justification in intimidating and searching foot passengers? Would their efforts not be better focused in searching freight trailers? Surely a more effective means of moving drugs or cash across our border within the common travel area. It feels like tokenism to me, says John. Are police and customs searching foot passengers? I mean, you get searched if you go through. I mean, your bag gets searched when you go through, but is that intimidating? Is that what you mean, John? Thanks for that. Sheena Mackay is still around, of course, says 439. Yes, we're looking for James Drake. Oh, no, sadly, James is no longer with us, but we're just trying to piece together something about James Drake, if you can. Poor Ted passed away years ago. Came into Nobles. I had the pleasure of looking after him, said Elizabeth. He was a gentleman, lovely person, and after a shower and clean clothes, very smart. Thank you, Elizabeth, remembering Ted. A tax on vehicles isn't fair, especially for a pensioner who only runs to the shop once a week or to church on Sunday. It should go on miles done per year, says Gary in Ramsey. Well, the technology is there. It's called GPS. That could easily be enforced, but would that be the best way forward? Because they'd have to make up that amount of money come what may, wouldn't they? First it was Craignish, now it's the children's bus pass travel. How does further restricting bus travel fit with government green policy, says G? It will be interesting, actually, in a couple of weeks' time. We'll be talking about housing when he comes in. But a week on Thursday, Devon Watson, Councillor Watson from Douglas is on Mannin Line, along with David Ashford, Douglas North MHK. We'll be talking about housing, in particular housing in Douglas. But I do know when Devon's been in the past, he's very much an advocate of free public transport. He thinks public transport should be absolutely free of charge. And I think the last time we talked about it, he bottomed it out at £2 million a year. For free public transport, I think it's £2 million a year in revenue. So everybody could have free transport. You wouldn't have to worry about it, and everybody would use public transport more, and we'd be greener, wouldn't we? Treasury Minister's been defending his decision to scrap MyCards. He's been asked in Keys what assessment's been made of the impact of removing the service. The cards end on 31st of December next year and are used by some people to collect their benefits or pension payments from the post office. Dr. Allinson insists just a small number of people will be affected.
Under the current contract, Treasury pays around £565,000 a year to the Isle of Man Post Office to provide the MyCard service. Around 3,000 people currently use the MyCard service. As they are transitioned towards payment into their bank or online accounts over the course of the next 14 months, the amount paid by Treasury for BACS transactions will increase. This additional cost must be offset against the savings arising from ending the MyCard contract with the Post Office. Social security officers have recently contacted the local branches of Barclays, HSBC, the Isle of Man Bank, Lloyds International and Santander. They all confirmed that they can offer a basic current account to Isle of Man residents who can provide photographic ID, proof of address and their tax number. There are no standing fees for this type of account, there is no fee for cash withdrawals and there is no overdraft facility. A debit card is provided to the account holder. As I said earlier, around 3,000 people currently use the MyCard service. It isn't possible to say how many of them have existing bank or online accounts, but it is thought to be the vast majority of them. For existing users, the MyCard service will continue to be available until the 31st of December 2025. So those who don't already have a bank account or online account will have up to 14 months to open one before the MyCard service is withdrawn. The Treasury have also been discussing other arrangements with the credit union. Treasury is also exploring the possibility of providing prepaid debit cards and cash payments to customers who, for whatever reason, cannot or will not open a bank account. When we look at the total number of people who get benefits, and we look at the total number who are receiving them via MyCard, it is a very, very small fraction of that. And what we're doing is not removing that access to cash, but doing that access to cash in a different way, so that in fact I would hope that people will be even more encouraged to spend that in the local communities.
There he is, Treasury Minister Dr. Allinson, MHK, talking about MyCards going 31st of December next year. And Betty's on now. Hello, Betty.
Hi, Andy. I just wanted to ask you, because I think you'd know, this stab radio that's been put out in Douglas, is it going to be allowed for the rest of the island? Because I never get a really clear signal.
The DAB radio you're talking about?
Yes, the
yeah,
DAB
okay.
radio.
It's in Douglas. It's basically on the east of the island at the moment because we've only got one transmitter. Hopefully, the plan is for it to go out to the rest of the Isle of Man at some point in the future. But at the moment, it's a 2-year experiment, Betty.
Oh, gosh, because I was hoping that it was coming to the end and that you'd be able to say you could have it in Ramsey.
Well, there is a plan to put a DAB transmitter for Manx Radio, and also our friends at Energy FM are on it as well. So I think we're looking at Peel, Ramsey and the South to hopefully cover most of the Isle of Man. But it's all down to money at the moment, Betty. Transmitters cost money.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Andy.
Good to hear from you.
And can you say thank you to Chris, because he's always so helpful in putting people through.
Oh, I'll give him a sandwich. Thanks, Betty.
Thank you.
We interrupt this broadcast to inform all our listeners about the huge range of bathrooms and showers on display at Pacesetter. Yes, you all know that Pacesetter is known as the island's largest tile store, but I'm here to tell you that their bathroom displays are truly inspirational. Visit Pacesetter on Harris Terrace, where you'll discover a fabulous collection of stylish bathrooms. There's something to suit everyone, with design available. Pacesetter bathrooms and showers to show off about.
Walk through the Christmas wonderland at Ramsey Garden Centre for a magical range of trees, decorations, unique gifts and much more, including the widest range of indoor and outdoor lights. Christmas at Ramsey Garden Centre, open 7 days a week.
At Manning Medics, we offer a wide range of health checks and specialist private consultants, including respiratory, renal, general surgery and gastroenterology. We can even do home visits too. To find out about all we have to offer and to book, visit manningmedics.com. Manning Medics, quality healthcare you can trust. Manning Medics is a trading name of I'll Love Your Gut Limited.
Dear Santa, this Christmas I would like more customers and more sales, please. I have been very good.
There are more reliable ways to make sure your business gets what it needs this winter. At Manx Radio, we'll create tailor-made advertising solutions to get you the results you want over the festive season and into the new year. Call our friendly sales team now on 682620 and give your business a really happy Christmas and New Year with the nation station, Manx Radio.
Can I have a new bike too?
No, buy your own.
Oh.
The Isle of Man is known as the road racing capital of the world. But have you ever wondered what it truly takes for riders to make it here?
My old saying, which I live by, if you want it bad enough, you'll get it.
In the Journey to a Dream podcast, we dive into the untold stories about the determination, skill and passion that fuel these riders as they seek racing glory.
It must have been a nightmare to work with and live with or whatever, because that was literally the only thing going through my mind.
I still go down Bray Hill and you're going, how are we allowed to do this?
Journey to a Dream, brought to you by Kawasaki Insurance, available at motorsport.manxradio.com or your favourite podcast provider.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
I got a note in from Alexandra who said, I listened yesterday to the education Mannin Line as well, only then realised that Mr. Crane taught me at school and his lessons were great. Paul Crane was on yesterday, MLC, who's part of the Education, Sport and Culture team. I missed yesterday's programme, says the WhatsApp 134, but I would like to have known, given the rise in university fees across yesterday, is government and the department any closer to stopping paying tens of thousands in fees to those students who once graduated never returned to the Isle of Man to work? Every year we pay an estimated £2 million to educate these very students at universities across who once they're there never need set foot on the Isle of Man again, but can literally walk away with a £50,000 golden handshake. As stated yesterday on the BBC, this was, the average student leaves university owing a minimum of £45,000 to £50,000 debt, but our government's willing to pay the majority of this and never see a penny of it back in taxes if they work on the Isle of Man. If you show willing and work here for at least 5 years, that should be fine, but if not, that money should go to help first-time buyers who do want to be here rather than those who don't. It's often been mentioned, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but obviously our university students have a real leg up compared to those across. I mean, heaven knows what the mental pressure is on the students across who, as that correspondent said, come out with £40,000, £50,000 debt in student fees and have it hanging over them. And bearing in mind, they don't pay much back, and you have to get to a certain income threshold to even start paying it back. But our university students do have less of a pressure on them because of public money being used. And if those students don't come back, do you think that's just being a bit mean? Because it may be that those students don't come back for 20 years and then suddenly do come back. People do eventually come back to the Isle of Man, don't they? So how do you think that could be framed, really? For that in the future. An electric car weighs tons and is capable of silly speeds. An electric push bike is power assisted. You still have to push the pedals for forward movement, so I don't think there's a comparison with cars in any way, shape or form. I just wonder, what do you think about that? Do you think electric bikes should be taxed, or do you think they should need insurance? Every bus stop has solar panels on their roofs, and the government buildings are covered. Are they? 16p per kilowatt hour in Spain, solar power and wind turbines, which aren't pleasing to the eye. Have our bus stops got solar panels on them at the moment? I don't recall a 29p obsession with electricity prices rocketed due to the invasion of Ukraine. Should we just accept that big fluctuations in fossil fuel prices, then and only it matters when you discuss renewables, says Steve. It would just be nice to know, Stephen. I think this 29p obsession of mine is just that it's a benchmark, if you like. It's a post in the sand. It's where we are. It's something that we judge everything else by, because obviously things are going to change. Whether we get onshore wind turbines, offshore wind turbines, whether we get solar, whatever we get in the future, remember, we're going to have to pay, because somebody has an electric carving knife, an electric cooker, an electric fire. Somebody charges an EV vehicle. So we're going to have to pay for this. Commercial users are going to have to pay. I mean, Manx Radio operates a 20,000 watt transmitter at Foxdale all day long. We have to pay for that. So is the price after our green future going to be more than 29p per kilowatt hour, or is it going to be less? Simple question. Or is it too simple? Right, that's it. Thanks to Chris Quirk on the phones. Give him a sandwich. And back tomorrow with another Open Line.
WINT